We're now live.
Thank you, Louise. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Ros Chad. I'm Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Hampshire 2050 and Corporate Services. I've been given authorisation today by the Leader, Councillor Rob Humby, who is unable to attend, to take all the decisions that are listed on the agenda for this meeting. We are currently being broadcasted live on YouTube via the County Council website. I'd like to welcome the following members. I'd like to welcome Councillor Adrian Collette, the Opposition spokesperson, and Councillor Louise Parker-Jones, Opposition spokesperson. And we are expecting Councillor Jackie Porter, who wishes to speak on agenda item 8.
Ros, can I say Jackie Porter has given her apologies and is leaving it to me to speak on her behalf.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you. So if I move us to the agenda for today, we have got no deputations, and therefore that leads us straight into agenda item 1 for non-key decisions, which is the Leaders Community Grant Fund Handover Community Engage. And Emma Noyce is going to present this report.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. This is a report of the Chief Executive. The information is contained within Appendix 2, which is page 12 on your document pack. The applicant is Andover Community Engage. The request is for £25,000 for a project to create a permanent venue for the organisation. Total project cost is £74,000. The local member, Councillor North, is aware of the application, and Officer's recommendation is an award of £19,000, which represents 50% of the eligible costs.
Thank you, Emma. I know we discussed this one in great length at the pre-meet along with the leader, and I know that obviously you've gone to the local member as well, and I think you're more than happy to take the recommendation in 2, which is to approve the grant total of £19,000 from the Leaders Community Grant Fund. So happy with that recommendation, make the decision. Thank you. That leads us on to agenda item 2, which is also you, Emma, for the rest of the Leaders Community Grant Funds.
Thank you. This is a report on the Leader Community Grants Fund on behalf of the Director of Hampshire 2050. I'll take you to Appendix 2, which is page 22 of your pack. There are 4 applications to be considered. The first, Overwallop Cricket Club, an application for £25,000 towards a project to rejuvenate cricket nets and pitches. It's a £70,000 project, which has already received a £1,000 councillor grant. The local member, Councillor Drew, is aware of the application, and our recommendation is for an award of £5,000, which is a contribution to the shortfall of the project. Are you happy for me to move through them, and you'll stop me if you have questions? The next is an application for Silchester Sports Pavilion. Requested amount is £25,000 for pavilion improvements. It's a total project of around about £222,000 with a £34,000 shortfall. The local member, Councillor Vaughan, is aware of the application, and it's a recommendation of £12,500 in this occasion, which is roughly 50% of the shortfall. The next is an application by the St John's Charity in Winchester. The request for £6,800 for a community-wide creative arts engagement project. It's a £30,000 project. The council member, Councillor Hiscott, is supportive, and we're recommending an award of £3,600 towards the creative lead element of this project. We think that's the element that adds value. And finally, a request by Step by Step, a request for £25,000 to go towards training for frontline staff, particularly to deal with children in crisis and mental health first aid. The total project is around about £27,000. Councillor Crawford supports, and we're recommending a 50% award of £13,700. Sorry, I haven't got the appendix on the screen in front of me, but you can see the award there. Request.
Sorry, Emma, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
Sorry, 13.2. And I was just going to say Appendix 3 just contains a minor grant adjustment that was dealt with under delegated powers in consultation with the leader.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for all of those. If I take everybody to the recommendations on page 15, and that is that as the recommendation is that the executive member of Hampshire 2050 and Corporate Services approves the 4 grants which total 34,360 from the Leaders Community Grant Fund 23-24 to cultural and community organisations across Hampshire. I know all these organisations do wonderful things, and I think it's very it's lovely that we can give them this support. Councillor Collette, you've got a question or a comment?
It's just a comment, thank you, Ros. The step-by-step is the one I'm perhaps most familiar with, and I look at the work they do, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it as well, because we're both local to that part of the county, and it's a good example of a group which is doing work which is probably saving us millions in terms of the impact on people's lives and what would then follow on later on if they weren't doing that work. So apart from the immediate good that it's doing, it's one of those areas we need to be very careful about our consideration in the future.
Would completely agree with you, Councillor Collette. They are a really worthwhile charity, and they do some amazing work, and they do help and support us in a number of ways. Is there anyone else that has any questions or comments before I make the decision? No. So if I go to paragraph 2, and I'm happy to approve the grants for a total of £34,360 out of the Leaders Community Grant Fund. Yeah. The next item on the agenda is the agenda item 3, which is the savings programmes to 2025 revenue savings proposals, and Gary Westbrook will be presenting this one.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon, Deputy Leader. You'll see before you the decision day paper regarding the proposed savings for what we call SP25. We've been to select committee this morning for both this paper and the next paper, and I understand Deputy Leader's not already summarised it. Will be summarised in terms of the key outcomes that came out of that meeting prior to taking the decision. You'll see within this paper a summary of the overall directorate, which has an overall cash limit revenue budget of about £15 million, and then savings proposals totalling £5 million, which is broadly split into 3 core areas. So the first is around a review of our grants, which then has 3 subsections within it that you'll see within the detail. The second area is around maximising the efficient and effective use of our office accommodation. And then the third area is around a proposal for organisational redesign, recognising that we are going to target our resources in the most efficient and effective way for a variety of strategic functions that we deliver on behalf of the organisation. Colleagues, you'll also see within the report a detailed equalities impact assessment. So one of those has been completed within Appendix 2 for every line of the savings proposals. And there's that ongoing commitment as we move through the various stages of these programmes, as the detail and the meat on the bone starts to appear, that those EIAs are dynamic documents that continue to be updated and reflected on as we move through both the delivery of those programmes and any associated decision making, either as part of executive member decision days or wider cabinet or full council decisions around it. So in terms of the recommendation is clear there at the beginning of the paper, and it's to approve savings proposals in accordance with the detail that sits in Appendix 1. And Councillor Chad, unless there's any questions, I'll stop there, please.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Collette or Councillor Parker-Jones, have you got anything that you want to add before I do my bit?
After you, Lou.
Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, I know that these are difficult and worrying times going forward, but there were several things that were concerning whilst we were going through the papers within Select Committee, which I think we do need to consider the broader implications of. One is the potential impact on our staff whilst certain things are being rolled back and rolled away, leaving those that are left perhaps more stretched, and which is not healthy for them. And the other things that I thought that we needed to consider were the other implications, the unintended consequences of anything we do like this, where we're now hearing the words, we will deliver the bare minimum. This does not send a good message to our communities, and I don't think it sends a reassuring message to them that we are delivering the quality of services that everybody has come to expect and appreciate from Hampshire. So I am hugely concerned, and I'm hugely concerned about the remaining gap. And this is probably wrapping up the next couple of papers, if I'm honest, but I don't think there's a way of looking at them in isolation, because they are all interconnected and they all have an impact on what will be delivered. So I find it hugely concerning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker-Jones. Councillor Collette.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. Well, obviously, I would echo what's just been said. The direction of travel that the County Council has been forced through, not just during the last 13 years of austerity and the 640 million by which our budgets have already been reduced, but even prior to that, when services were being taken away and reduced for all sorts of different reasons. It's a very worrying direction that we're going. There aren't easy options for making the savings that are required of us. The 132 million that's been identified over the next 2 years, plus we still have 71 million of previous savings that have got to be delivered. So that's 200 million more to come out of our budget. The leader was quite right, jointly with the leader of Kent, to write to the Prime Minister and flag up the very serious challenge that's facing our county councils. And I hate to say it, but Birmingham today, I don't want to see Hampshire in 2 or 3 years' time. I think if we did, we'd see a lot of other councils in between. And it's a very serious threat that's covering the whole of local government. We went through all of these proposals and both of these reports in quite a lot of detail this morning at the Select Committee. And I know there are a number of points arising out of that you were planning to take on board, for which I'm pleased. So, yes, I hate the direction of travel. I really, really think the most important thing, and actually you said it this morning, the most important thing is our lobbying of government to come up with a solution for local government before it's too late, because it's already too late for a lot of things we deliver, and it's going to get worse over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collette. There was a really in-depth and thorough debate this morning at the Select Committee on the proposals that have been brought forward, and I'd really like to pay tribute to Councillor Glenn for a well-chaired meeting and enabling everyone to really get down to the detail of some of those saving proposals. I really welcomed the deputation from the Hampshire Cultural Trust as well this morning, and I think we recognise the importance of continuing a really constructive, a good constructive relationship with them going forward, so that they they are supported in the role that they have. The members also brought up about the different tiers of government as well, and how maybe that they can help and support, and we can work with those different partners to with some of our grant funding as well. And I think that's a really important point as well, and something that we will explore as well. I'm with you both with this, Councillor Parker-Jones and Councillor Collett. None of us come into this role to make these decisions, do we? That they are not nice decisions to make. And the proposals that are being considered from the range of options to close that £132 million gap that we will face in April 2025, to be able to continue to deliver for our 1.4 million residents that we do have. We've seen our costs dramatically rise and the demand for our core services really increase over the years. For example, children's services and adult services. I think what's really key is that we continue to look after our most vulnerable residents that we have in Hampshire. We are very proud, and we continue to be very proud of the work that we all do to maintain our finances in the way that they are. And credit needs to go to all of our officers for helping and supporting with that. We have been through over a decade of austerity, and we have taken out a huge figure from our budget, over 600 million over that time. But we are facing that £132 million budget gap in 2025-26, and we do need to do something and be proactive in doing something about that, and working through that in a managed way as well, I think is very important. We will continue to lobby central government and to highlight the concerns of local authorities going forward. I agree with you, Councillor Collett, that actually the move that the leader and the leader of Kent took to write that letter nearly this time last year was absolutely the right thing to do, and has shown that we are being proactive in dealing with the issues that we know are coming our way through no fault of the local authority or of anyone at all. It's just purely demand and the lack of funding from central government. We have seen many other councils in recent, a few local councils in recent weeks having to declare financial difficulties, and I'm thankful that we are not in that position, and that because we have that forward financial planning, we, as I've already said, can do that take that managed approach to what we are going to have to do. I think the public consultation really did reaffirm the fact that we do need better financing from central government, but they did affirm that they agree with our financial strategy of looking after our most vulnerable residents, and that has to be our priority going forward. Therefore, if I can take everyone to the recommendations, and I apologise, I need to. Rob normally has me to find the position on the page for him. Apologise. Which is on page 29, and I'd like to approve the submission of the proposed saving options contained in the report and Appendix 1 to the Cabinet. Thank you, Gary, for such a a thorough report and for taking us all through it during the select committee. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Can I take everyone to agenda item 4 then, which is the corporate service savings programme to 2025, and I believe Rob Carr is going to deliver this report.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Chad. Yeah, it's the same as Gary's. So this is the same proposals for my Directorate Corporate Operations and Jack's Directorate People and Organisation. So very similar format for the report, and you've got the proposals set out in the appendix there. As I mentioned this morning, a lot of the proposals within both of our directorates are similar to the ones that you've seen in the past around efficiencies, income generation, etc. And just picking up on Councillor Parker-Jones' point, where there are savings proposals that impact on staff, then clearly we will be discussing those with the staff at full consultation before we bring any of those in. So picking up on some of those points that she raised. But other than that, nothing else to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Collette, Councillor Parker-Jones, have you got anything to add to this one, or did you cover it in the?
I feel I covered it when I spoke a few moments ago.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I feel I've pretty much covered it. The only thing I did want to raise is that though we've talked about like equality impact assessments, we haven't really touched on the environmental impact assessments, and I do want. I'm always concerned that we don't get very much about the environmental impact assessments when we're discussing finance. And I do understand that people probably look at it and think, well, it's about money, but all of this will have an impact on our environmental and climate change emergency as well. So as long as we can be reassured that when they come back with the equality impact assessments, that we have appropriate environmental impact assessments conducted as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker-Jones. I'm sure that absolutely we can do that going forward as well when we come back with the impact assessments. I feel I probably summed up how everyone feels about having to make any of these savings. I will just reiterate thank you to all of our officers, and that we are able to make that managed decision and navigate our way through this, rather than being in the position of some of the other councils at this time. The recommendations for the saving proposals going forward is on page 109, and I'm happy to approve the submission of the proposed saving options contained in the report and Appendix 1 to the Cabinet. Thank you, Rob, for your presentation there. Agenda item 5 is Connect to Hampshire, and it's an update on Hampshire's temporary staffing agency, and I believe Jack is presenting this one.
Yeah. So it's the annual report in relation to our joint venture with Hampshire and Kent Commercial Services LLP, trading as Connect to Hampshire, and it covers the reporting period in relation to 22-23. Connect to Hampshire is in its 4th year of trading. The paper describes all the governance arrangements, and particularly how the board and the executive board are overseen with the involvement of officers as appropriate and in line with the legal arrangements. I guess the key purpose of the report is to highlight performance, so particularly noting Connect to Hampshire met all its jointly agreed performance targets for the reporting year. And Hampshire County Council spent 37 million through Connect to Hampshire, which is an increase on the previous 2 years. Most of that spend is in relation to residential and nursing care, qualified social workers and IT professionals. The challenges faced by Connect to Hampshire in the reporting period are largely akin to those that we've faced as an organisation in relation to labour market shortages and workforce challenges. And we have worked closely with Connect to Hampshire, and they have worked closely with the agencies and with other professional bodies to ensure that they can continue to provide the services that we need from them. In terms of financial performance, the report outlines the profit share for 21-22, which was confirmed as 250,000, and of which half of that, which is half of the overall net profit. So that means we received that back into Hampshire County Council. And the report also sets out the estimate for the 22-23 reporting year, although the accounts have yet to be signed off. So assuming things stay as they are, once the accounts have been audited, we will receive circa 400,000 from Connect to Hampshire for this reporting year. So that was all I really wanted to say. It's another good year for Connect to Hampshire.
Thank you, Jack. Can I just ask one quick question just from what you've just said? Do you know when the accounts are due to be signed off?
So we're having a board meeting in October, and the auditor is coming to that to confirm sign off of the accounts. So we're anticipating October, November will be the formal sign off.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Do we have any questions or comments any further?
Nothing from me. It's an excellent report, something that's working very well. Definitely.
Okay, then if we go straight to the recommendations then, which is on page 225 of the report, of the papers, and it's paragraph 2, and the recommendation is the executive member is asked to note the update for Connect to Hampshire in relation to the 2022-23, including its performance during this period in relation to the provision of temporary agency workers in the county council. I'm happy to approve that recommendation. Right. Thank you, Jack, for presenting your report. Agenda item 6 is the Basildon Windmill future management, and I believe Chris is presenting this one. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Councillor Shad. Yes, so this is essentially a paper to consider a proposal received from Hampshire Culture Trust in relation to Basildon Windmill. So a point of clarity to start with in relation to Basildon Windmill, this is a venue that is owned by Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust, leased by the County Council, and the County Council and Hampshire Culture Trust have an agreement, tenancy and will agreement in place in respect of the operation and property management of the venue. One of the driving forces of this particular proposal being considered today was in relation to grant funding withdrawal from Eastleigh Borough Council earlier this year and implemented in August just gone. During that period, the Culture Trust have been on a journey to essentially consider their options, which they are obliged to do under the terms of the management and funding agreement, considering options to diversify the operation essentially, but they have proven unsuccessful. And essentially this proposal is being considered today because under the terms of the management and funding agreement, the County Council is obliged legally to consider any proposal that the Culture Trust sets out for it is able to essentially cease operations at a particular venue. The Culture Trust have submitted that proposal. That proposal has been shared with Eastleigh Borough Council as a partner that it needs to be engaged in that process, and it has also been shared with Winchester City Council as a co-founding father of the management and funding agreement with the County Council and the Cultural Trust. Yeah, but final point just to note, and going back, looping back to my one of my initial points about the ownership, is that in addition to the decision surrounding the endorsement of the Cultural Trust's recommendations to cease operations at the windmill, this would also essentially result in the County Council serving its own notice on Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust, and that the Culture Trust notice period is from 6 months. And the only final point I would make is that the Culture Trust and the County Council and the Hampshire Building Preservation Trust are working collaboratively as supportive partners to ensure that the long-term operation is of the venue, the windmill, can be sustained over the long term. We're working with them through that process as best we can as the County Council.
Thank you, Chris. I just have one question. Have we notified of, I believe you have the local member for this, yeah?
Yes, yeah, Councillor House, yeah, he was notified a couple of weeks ago, yeah, at least.
Thank you. Councillor Collette and Councillor Parker-Jones, is anyone? Councillor Collette?
Yes, the proposals all seem very sensible and reasonable, and I understand discussions are going on with the Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust, and I'm grateful to Mr. Deere for the briefing on that when I sent in a few questions last week. Just one question remaining in my mind. It's a long time since I've been to the windmill, but I have a recollection that there is a pathway, a right of way past it, and there are lots of trees around and so on, and there will be liabilities that come from that. Which presumably would then pass to the Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust. Is that something that's being covered in the discussions with them?
We haven't got to the specifics of pathways or land aspects or in that level of detail, but certainly the ownership would pass back to the Hampshire Buildings Preservation Trust in respect of elements of property and land that we have since leased from them. So yeah, it would go back to ownership, and responsibility would revert back to the Preservation Trust, but that's not something specifically that we've discussed with them at this point.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, if they have concerns about that, it's something they'll raise during the discussions. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parker-Jones, have you got anything that you wish to?
No, nothing additional to add.
Okay, thank you. We had a lengthy discussion on this proposal in the chairman's in the briefing for the decision day, and therefore I'm going to go straight to the recommendations on page 237 of the papers, and it's paragraph 2 and 3. These aren't as short as the other ones, so I won't read these ones out, but I'm happy to approve both of those recommendations. Thank you, Chris, for your presenting the report. Next on the agenda is takes to agenda item 7, and that's Parish and Town Council Investment Fund and Rural Communities Fund. And Emma, I think you're presenting this one.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. I'll take you to Appendix A on page 252 to firstly deal with the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund applications. This is a fund that provides between £1,000 and £30,000 capital or revenue support to parish and town councils or community organisations. With this particular fund, there's not a specification or a requirement for match funding. So the 4 applications you have before you, you have Forley, who are requesting £18,130 towards 4 solar PV panels. The local member, Councillor McAvoy, supports, and we are recommending a full award. The next is Durley, who are looking for £28,000 towards LED lighting, insulation and associated ceiling works. The local member, Councillor Humby, is supportive, and we are recommending a full award. The next is for the Millennium Memorial Hall in Littleton, requesting £10,950 towards batteries as the final part of their energy efficiency programme. Councillor Warwick, the local member, supports that, and we are recommending a full award. And finally, for this section of grants, Making Space in Havant are requesting £10,300 for kitchen and other associated works. The local member, Councillor Branson, supports and has already committed or I understand approved £1,000 local member grant towards this. We're recommending an award of £6,800, which represents what contribution to the outstanding amount that we believe is eligible for this fund. So there are some elements to the project that we do not believe are eligible. So we're recommending 6,800 towards that application. So those are Parish and Town Council. Are you happy for me to move on?
Yeah.
So Appendix B at page 258 deals with the Rural Community Fund, and this is for smaller awards up to and including up to £10,000, and this does require 50% match funding. And we have one application here, Bramley Village Hall, who are requesting £8,000 towards their village hall kitchen and other improvements. It's a £19,000 project. The local member, Councillor Vaughan, is supportive, and we're recommending the full award is actually £7,938. So that's that, and then Appendix C just provides information on any subsequent applications or any applications that we've dealt with since the last decision day, which have been dealt with under delegated authority in consultation with the leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Have we got any questions or comments from anyone in regards to these?
I think it's really important, these little grants. They are hugely valuable. I know they sound very small when we've been talking about, you know, cuts of 132 million, but actually these tiny pots are really vital. And I was very pleased to see Fair Oak had a small amount under the delegated pot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker-Jones. Thank you, Emma, for your report. If we go straight to the recommendation on page 247, and it's paragraph 2, and the 2A is that the leader and executive member for Hampshire 2050 and corporate services approves 4 grant applications to parish and town council investment fund totaling £63,880 as set out in Appendix A. And 2B is to approve the grant application to the Rural Communities Fund for Bramley Village Hall, totaling £7,940, as set out in Appendix B of the report. I'm happy to approve both of those recommendations. Next, we have agenda item 8, and that's members' access to exempt and confidential information. And I know that Councillor Porter wanted to talk on this, but Adrian, you're going to speak on her behalf. Do you want to, have you got something that she specifically had to say?
Yes, what she was going to say was that as the spokesperson on children's services for the Lib Dem group, she took that role very seriously, and she would check out everything that was going on across the council, not just the papers that related to the Children's Services Select Committee or decision days, because there'd be many other things which had an impact on children. And she found it increasingly frustrating that papers that might have things in that she needed to look through, every time they came up, she had to jump through hoops in order to be able to get access in order to see them. She very much welcomes this report as the right way forward. And those are comments which I would thoroughly endorse myself. I do remember the days when all papers went to all councillors. That's not quite taking us back to where we were before, but it's a big step back towards where we were before. And there are 2 exemptions listed in the report. One is where a report might identify a particular individual, and Mr. Kelly has very kindly said, yes, well, we could, if the nature of the report allows it, a redacted version could be made available to members with the names blanked out so that the person couldn't be identified. The second category, the things that are particularly sensitive, either from a law position or contractual position or whatever, that's more difficult because it comes down to judgment. And I guess we'll just suck it and see how we go with this. But I very much welcome the report, and I thank Mr. Kelly for the work that he's done on this. I think it takes us much more back to where we used to be, and very much appreciate it. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Adrian. David, do you want to present the report?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Chair. Well, I probably don't have much to add to Councillor Collett's summary of what the report is proposing, but yeah, in essence, it's a much more open arrangement for members. So members will have access to the vast majority of exempt reports that are produced by the council. Just to emphasise that that doesn't mean that members of the public will have access to those reports. It's just councillors. So clearly there was a degree of subjectivity in a particularly sensitive report. I think we've given assurances that we think there will be a very limited number of reports that will fall into that category, and we've given some examples which I think are helpful. So I don't have much more to add other than that, the recommendations are on page 261.
Thank you, David. This is a really welcomed report, and I think to echo what Councillor Collette said, members will really welcome this going forward and will make their opportunities to help their residents far more effective and efficient going forward. So on that note, I will go straight to the recommendations, which, as David has said, is on page 261, and it's paragraph 2 and 3, and I'm happy to approve both of those recommendations on that paper. Thank you, David, for such an in-depth report. I will now read a formal notice to exclude the press and public before asking that the webcast is ended. Exclusion of the press and public. That the public be excluded from the decision day during the following item of business, as it is likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during this item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information within paragraph 3 of part 1 of the Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and further that, so that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemptions outweighs the public interest to disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the report. Therefore, can I please request that the webcast is stopped?